Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and we're going to get into it. This is every Tuesday we go over, or try to go over, Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. And today we're going to talk about criticals, fumbles, nat 1s, nat 20s, and why they matter. The implicit and explicit reason in A5E, why crits and fumbles matter in this iteration of the game, and why they've been expanded to every uh, check in the game in this D20 system. So allow me to um, uh, share with you some of the design elements of Level Up Advanced 5th Edition and a different look and opinion about why criticals and fumbles, criticals rolling a 20 on a d20, and fumbles rolling a natural 1 on a d20 matter in Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. So I'm going to share with you an aspect of the game, and we're going to go over some small details, the uh, the game system, the rules. That's the explicit reason why it's there, and then kind of talk underneath, like what's the implicit reason behind extending crits and fumbles to every die roll available. Now, mind you, and this is all actually in the rules, crits and fumbles may not apply to every single die roll narratively. It may not matter, right? If the players are traveling across the accursed desert or through the Five Kings Mountains or whatever, and they're just going from A to B, it may not matter. But we will talk about uh, the the fact that crits and fumbles, nat ones and nat 20s, have an impact on the exploration pillar, which is a huge, well developed part of the A5E, as well as the fact that in a group setting, having crits and fumbles applied to the entire group will and does matter, and it kind of brings a more of a teamwork effort. And in many ways, if you're playing physically amongst your friends, and you're rolling dice at the table or using a die roller online, that there's a there's a bit of like tension involved, especially when you have a number of individuals taking part in it. So right now, what I'm sharing with you is what is it, page 416, 415 of the Adventurer's Guide, and this talks about ability check criticals. And there's a list of these. I'm going to read some of these out, and let me just share this as a one pager. Um, so, excuse me. Here we go. Ability check criticals. When you roll a natural 20 and succeed on an ability check, or when you roll a natural 1 and fail on an ability check, if you're using a skill, roll 1d6 to determine what special effect occurs. Because of the benefits of ability check criticals, some players may try a variety of easy ability checks to get a critical effect. The narrator is always the arbiter of these critical effects and can rule that if an ability check is superfluous or insignificant, any resulting natural 20s and natural 1s have no special effect. That needs to be repeated. If the narrator is always the arbiter of these critical effects and can rule that if an ability check is superfluous or insignificant, any resulting natural 20s and natural 1s have no special effect. In other words, if there's nothing interesting that will happen, if the players have plenty of time, energy, resources, there's no tension involved, then rolling a natural 1 or natural 20, say when they're traveling across the devastated landscape and they're just going from A to B, then it really doesn't matter. And you can just hand wave it, which, to be honest with you, if that's the case, then you almost don't even need die rolls in the first place. You just take a passive check, decide whether they've succeeded or failed, and or just presume success unless there's some outside force preventing them from succeeding. But in this instance, what we're trying to come across in advanced fifth edition and level up is the fact that to encourage players to maybe attempt skill checks, even though they know they may have a guaranteed success. They may know that they have a propensity for success, but they still want to roll the dice to see what happens, and they may gain some benefit from it. And here we have a list of generalized skill use and what benefits can come from them, such as using arcane skills, having facts and discoveries. Using under facts and discoveries is using skills such as arcana, culture, engineering, which are two skills included in A5E, history, investigation, nature, perception, religion, and survival. For arcane criticals only occur when an active magical effect is involved. This might be the response to a counterspell or dispel magic, the curious activation of a specific magic item, or interaction with a ritual or permanent enchantment. Moving on, we have medicine, the medicine skill, and the physical skills and social skills. And when it comes to things like, for example, let's stay right here with physical skills. Skills include skills such as acrobatics, athletics, sleight of hand, and stealth. And um, there's a bit of a I hate to compare it to the trolley car problem, but there's a little bit of a like, why are crits included? What happens when you have crits and failures? And I know that I've played this game, role playing games long enough, 40 plus years, that there could be some pretty outrageously horrible crit and especially fumble tables. I've got a spear roll, you stab yourself in the back. There's some foolishness involved. Let it be known that that kind of uh, uh, gonzo crits and failures and things like that have been smoothed out, so it makes a lot more sense. And so, for example, under physical skills, if under critical success, we've got like cool confidence. For example, you may take 10 on these skill checks for the next 24 hours, even if it is not normally allowed. Or if you roll 2, there's impressive success. You impress others with your physical feat. For the next hour, you gain an expertise die on intimidation and persuasion checks against targets who saw your success. And how that applies narratively, whether you roll a die or you choose one, whether you let the player choose one, or you as the narrator are like, you know what, that really applies. I mean, your barbarian was kicking ass or something like that, and now because of your athletics check from, I don't know, leaping across the table and slicing down the two hobgoblins or something. That sounds like an impressive success. Let's give this individual expertise die on their intimidation and persuasion checks. But anyway, under the critical success for physical, we have like lead the way. For example, your allies who attempt a similar check in the next 5 minutes gain an expertise die. There's like wearing nothing at all. For the next hour, you ignore any disadvantage to stealth checks gained from wearing armor, or maybe satisfying exhaustion. You'll sleep well tonight. For the next 24 hours, double the hit points you regain from spending hit dice during a short rest. And then lastly is speedy. You can immediately use your reaction to move half your speed. And there's also suggestions when using other methods of critical successes and failures. For example, the trolley car example is player uses lock picks to pick a lock. And normally in D20, we have a success or a failure. And oftentimes what ends up happening is when you just have straight success, straight failure, is there's nothing interesting happening. So what happens if the player rolls a critical success or critical failure? Normally the rules don't give you much to do when it comes to skill use, but strangely enough, there's plenty of things that could happen. Say if a character is picking a lock, maybe if they get a critical success, they know that lock and they know how to pick that lock when they see that lock later on in the dungeon. Or maybe if it's a failure, do they break their lock picking tools? Do they make a lot of noise when they unlock the lock and the lock falls off the door and it falls to the floor, chain and everything, and it creates a loud noise? Maybe their lock picking tool gets stuck in the lock and now they can't roll again or attempt to pick it, anyone to pick it, because it broke off in the lock. Maybe they are successful in opening the lock, but something else happens and it gets jammed, or they make a lot of noise, or so it sets off an alarm or something like that. Maybe they drop their tools and they have to recover their tools, and literally on the other side of the door there are enemies awaiting them or something of that nature. I mean, maybe they realize that, you know what, you failed to pick the lock. You know you can pick it, but it's going to take you more time to do so. Maybe they've accidentally triggered something that makes it even more difficult, and they're like sweating or whatever. There's so many, and it might add time. Again, going back to time, energy, resources. It's like there can be more things involved, and narratively speaking, we can make this a lot more interesting. And so crits and fumbles do matter in advanced fifth edition because it's far more for storytelling. So let's continue with what is a critical fumble for physical skills. So we've got a fumble: an item held in your hands, narrator's choice, gains the broken condition. Or, like I was talking about, lock picking tools, maybe a battle axe, a spear, a shield. There's also a jam. You jam your fingers or toes, and for the next 10 minutes, your melee attack bonus or AC are reduced by 1, the narrator's choice. Or loosened latch. Something you are wearing inexplicably gains the broken condition. Strap on a shield, your backpack strap, or something like that. Maybe you are off balance and you fall prone. Or pull a ligament. Your speed is reduced by 5 feet for the next hour. Or pushed too hard. You suffer 2 levels of fatigue. After one round of these levels of fatigue is removed, after one round, one of these level, wow, my brain. After one round, these levels of fatigue is removed and the other is gone after 1 hour. And so, you, of course, it's your game. You can use or use, abuse, or not use anything that is available, but it's highly suggested that you use criticals, successes and failures to enhance the story. Maybe it causes an issue that the players have to deal with. Maybe it's far more descriptive, even if you don't want to use the mechanical effects. Oh, you're fighting the hobgoblins and the strap on your backpack breaks and it falls to the ground, and you're just like, oh man, I'm gonna have to fight these people off and then grab up my bag and pull it up into my arms until I can fix it later. Putting the straps back in or something, like carrying groceries and the bottom falls out or something like that. It can be pretty interesting. Sometimes it could be maybe a little bit comedic, or maybe you need comedy to break the tension, things of that nature. So, for example, here we have, and then we'll move on to the exploration pillar. But for here, like under social skills, include skills such as animal handling, which is kind of cool, deception, insight, intimidation, performance, and persuasion. And special, when using a disguise kit, the effect of the natural 20 or natural 1 is stored until a particularly opportune or inopportune time. And what that means is, under here in the special, when using a disguise kit, is that the critical on the disguise, the critical, wow, my brain, the critical success and failure applies to the disguise, not the person underneath it. So when you put the disguise, let's say a character puts the disguise on, gets a critical success to get into the castle or the city beyond the city state walls, past the guards. When they take the disguise off, it doesn't apply, but when they put it back on and go into a tavern and the city guard are there and they see the disguise, boom, it turns back on again. It's kind of stored in it because you have a disguise on. So, for example, under using social skills for critical successes, we have like clever banter, improve the target's attitude toward you. Someone that was put off might become apathetic, and an apathetic person might become friendly. Or maybe there's a friendly crowd. The target calls over some friends that are friendly to you and interested in what you are doing. So, for example, maybe it's not just you convince the city guard, but maybe the city guard calls over their fellow guards individuals and they come over. Or maybe there's a gift. The target wants to give you some small gift outside the scope of this conversation. And that gift could be information. It may be a badge to get into an underground club. It might be a few coins. It may be a special it could be a tasty pastry. It may be a small map and a handwritten note to guide you to where you need to go. Or it may even put some, oh, by the way, not only are there criminals that patrol this area, you might want to watch out for, I don't know, hidden arcanists that live in the dark alleys or something like that. We've been patrolling them, but they're very clever and they might look out for you. And the PCs go, oh, it might be an arcane city. And the guards like, oh, at night, gargoyles fly throughout the city patrolling when we're asleep during the day, at night or something like that. Also, for social interaction, maybe there's a good reputation, such as after this conversation, the attitudes of the target's closest allies improve towards you as a clever banter. Or loose lips, the target accidentally reveals a useful piece of information. Maybe the guards are like, oh, we are lacking in personnel and there's a gap in our security. Or the Council of Seven wizards really they really don't exist. that everyone thinks that they're wizards, and but they're really just monsters laying in disguise or something. And lastly, love interest. The target may become romantically interested in you, which brings its own issues. And of course, there's social failure. Maybe there's an accidental reveal. You, the PC, accidentally reveal a piece of information best kept hidden. Or escalating tension. The target calls over some friends that are not fans of you and your cause. This would be pretty interesting if the person that the player character is talking to is interested and they call over people they think are interested in a positive way, and then you realize that they're all not interested in a negative way. Maybe there's a false negative. You believe something truthful that the target says to be a lie. Or maybe there's gossip, such as after this conversation, the attitudes of the target's close allies worsens towards you. Someone who was apathetic might be put off, and someone put off might become borderline hostile. So, for example, the player, and this can happen especially if you use retainers and henchmen, which is not very common in modern D20, but maybe the player is trying to intimidate a townsfolk, and your own allies hear the conversation and are put off by it, right? It affects another group. Or suspicious. The target believes something truthful. The target believes something truthful to be a lie. For example, the player says something truthful and is like, listen, I'm just using persuasion to say, hey, we're injured and hurt from being attacked by bandits. Could you please let us into the city state? And they go, sure. And then we come in and they're like, they're faking. Watch them because they're lying or something. And lastly, unfriendly banter. Worsen the target's attitude towards you by one step, as in gossip. Now, we're going to go over here and share something else. I'm going to see if there's anybody here. No. Oh, hello there. At least there's one person. All right. So let's go over into exploration challenges and talk about critical successes and failures when it comes to exploration. Of course, talking about the rules, that's an explicit reason to have criticals because the player may gain expertise die. They may affect even more individuals than they weren't expecting when using their skills. Maybe they gain some kind of a temporary benefit, or heck, even wipe away fatigue or strife, which is a huge drawback in advanced fifth edition. And being able to wipe that away is also necessary, as well as things like gaining temporary hit points and fixing or breaking equipment and things of that nature that is not normal in D20 systems. So here we are into exploration challenges, and under exploration there is a I think I hit the wrong. Let's see, 62. There we go. Let's start here at journey activities, shall we? Sorry about that. So under journey activities, when the players are engaging in a long journey, they're traveling across the accursed desert through the Five Kings Valley or something or whatever. Heck, navigating through the cityscape of the Council of Seven. I bring these up just because they don't mean anything, but I have to give a title to it. And during those journey activities, players are able to pick a journey role. So whenever they travel through a region, you as a narrator describe that region, and the players don't get to spam this. They don't get to use this whenever they want to. What happens is you as a narrator say, "Hey, they're traveling through a woodland area. They are going to make they're going to pick one role and then describe it that way. And then they get to the mountains, and you could say, well, transversing the mountains, it's going to take you twice as long. So you're able to pick a journey role and do this twice, right? And this is not based on character class. Doesn't matter what character class you are, you can pick any of them. And we have roles like befriend animal, chronicle, cook, busk, which is like entertaining people on the road, cover tracks, gather components, gossip, entertain, hunt and gather, et cetera, et cetera. And under each of these, for example, under prey, right here, the players is able to, you make a skill roll based on whatever journey roll you're performing, and there's a chance of getting a success or failure, and then a critical success or a critical failure. And it is encouraged, especially if you have a very high skill level, to want to engage in these things while you're traveling instead of twiddling your thumbs and rolling your eyes to hope to get to the front of the dungeon or the adventure and going, why are we spending time traveling? Well, there's a reason for it, because if you get a success or a critical success, it can really benefit your character. So, for example, under Prey, while traveling, many choose to connect with deities and spirits. An adventurer makes a religion check. On a critical failure, the gods are displeased. Each party member discovers that one's supply has spoiled. Or if there's a failure, the gods do not listen. Under a success, the adventurer receives a blessing for each day spent doing this journey activity, gaining an expertise die on the next ability check they make in the region. And then lastly, under critical success, the entire party gains an expertise. Yes, this is the entire party gains an expertise die on their next ability checks made in this region, and the gods lead the adventurer to a boon or discovery, which in the Trials and Treasures book, this is page 63. Yep, 63 in Trials and Treasures. There's whole charts on boons and discoveries, and things from allies to magic items, experience points, and things of that nature, gifted with some kind of arcane thing, or maybe just finding food and water, are some of the boons and discoveries. And of course, there are D100 tables spread amongst different effects, whether it's social or explorative or combat, and kind of cool. So let's go to gossip. Success on an investigation or a persuasion check tells an adventurer the local news and rumors. All right, so a critical failure says that the party learns a false rumor. And this is an opportunity for a narrator to make up something, maybe a red herring, or tell the players about an enemy that's on the horizon that really will never show up. For failure, the party gains no rumor at all. Under a success for gossip, for each day spent doing this journey activity, the narrator reveals an engaging rumor or tidbit that could lead the party on a new side quest or support the main plot of the campaign. And maybe the players find out that there are manticores, or someone is breeding hellhounds, or what have you. And lastly, a critical success under gossip. As a success, the local gossip tells the party, leads the party to a boon or discovery. Maybe there's a golden stream of pale amber liquid, and if you just drink upon it, it will heal all your wounds. And you're like, are you sure? You know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one. That this here we have yet another reason for, well, rolling on our tables, making skill checks and things of that nature for when it comes to travel and exploration. And then right here under group checks, group checks take place when the entire party is engaged in a single task. In a group check, every player makes an ability check. If more than half of the group succeeds in their check, the group as a whole succeeds. If half or less of the group succeed, the group as a whole fails. And this is important because a lot of times this happens, especially when it comes to perception checks, right? One member of the group crests the hill and looks over the hill to see if there's any enemies or anything that they need, and they make a perception check, and they're like, I rolled a total of 5. And then the other group members jump in, oh, I want to roll, I want to roll, I want to roll. And that's where it becomes a group check, which means if there's 4 members, success happens when 3 out of 4 succeed, right? So your hyper perceptive elven build character might be very perceptive, but if your other 3 members are pretty dull in the matter, and they're constantly bickering amongst themselves, or maybe they're all on their own in their own world, distracted by their own guilt and problems and other things. Sure, the elven character may see lots of stuff, but the elf character might be distracted because the paladin's loud armor and bard laden, I don't know, Pegasus or something's making too much noise or what have you. Also, when an exploration challenge mentions a group check, the narrator should allow the adventurers to use different skills or abilities where appropriate. Not all adventurers have to make the same check, as long as each is contributing in the same way. So this means, for example, if the players are traveling along, maybe one player, let's say all the players are very skilled at adventuring in the wild. So one character may be very perceptive, another character may be using stealth, yet another one is using survival skill, and yet another one is investigating the area. So all 4 of them may be performing different skills, but collectively they are engaged in navigating through maybe a devastated landscape, and the group check is, do they discover the hidden tomb? Are they recognized by enemies? Are they being tracked by the hellhounds that were being bred that can sniff their trail or something like that? Lastly, group checks, criticals. A critical success is achieved when all members of the party succeed in their checks, while a critical failure takes place if all members of the party fail. This goes back to when I was saying about everyone making a roll, that a critical success is when every single member of the party succeeds in their check. Now, they may be using different skills or the same skills. For example, a critical success on perception means that every member is successful in that die roll. Maybe the wizard or sorcerer fails their check, but the other 3 members succeed, in which case you've succeeded in a check, but it's not a critical success as a group. And this also lends itself to working together. So the explicit rule is more than half the group must succeed, but the implicit is working together and ensuring that players who are highly capable fill the role in their capabilities, and that they try to reduce their liabilities. So here we have there's a long list of exploration challenges, detailed out like they would be, I dare say, stat blocks like monsters, except you can't take a sword and cut down the exploration thing. Um, it requires, it's very OSR in the sense of challenging the players without a clear solution. For example, let's take a look at, let's narrow this down to a one pager. And sorry about this. So we have here, I should have picked something different. Bridge of Sorrow, a third tier supernatural encounter. Now, there's nothing that a sword or an arrow is going to do in terms of this challenge, but this challenge rating here is a challenge 13, is worth 10,000 XP, and has a DC of 19/16. Here's details at the beginning of the chapter, but that's not the important part. The important part is it's an area challenge, of course, and it's immediate and takes less than about an hour of the player's time to engage in whatever this is. And the descriptor here is: a narrow bridge made of polished black marble crosses a deep and fast flowing river ahead. Ominous clouds cover the sky in a 2-mile radius, casting the area into shadow. Each adventurer feels an urge to plunge into the water, and an entire area dampens their very spirits. And there are some uh, possible solutions given to the narrator, just to give them a push and go, listen, even all of us get stuck on something. And so if the players come up with a good idea, here's some possible solutions. But A5E very much advocates for creative problem solving. And it's very important to have creative problem solving if you're using the exploration pillar. So this bridge has a suppressing aura. All magic within the shadow, all magic within the shadow of the clouds is suppressed, as if in an anti-magic field. In addition, each of the adventurers sees visions of their worst fears reflected in the bridge. So possible solutions are: the bridge is physically safe to cross, as long as the adventurers can resist the urges tugging at their minds. A group check, here we go, group check, focused on bolstering the party's resolve is needed. For example, a performance check to lift the party's spirits, a religion check to recall and recite an inspiring prayer, or a wisdom check to keep the oppressive magic at bay. So, for example, each of the players may do something or perform something to help everybody out. For example, the bard might want to do a performance check and recite a poem, while, I don't know, the barbarian makes an intimidation check with the rest of the party. Like, we better keep, don't make me, because I will. We better keep moving across this bridge. I don't know if you want to lick your fingers and smack people in the back of the neck, but that may be a thing. Alternatively, a boat or raft and a group survival check rolled with advantage for any characters with proficiency with both survival and water vehicles can be made to cross the river without setting foot on the bridge. Yeah, navigating around it. So here we have a critical failure. Remember, this is a group check. Under a critical failure, the adventurers are compelled to plunge into the river 60 feet below, each making an athletics check to dive, taking 66 or 21 bludgeoning damage from impacting the water, or half damage on a success. In addition, they suffer 2 levels of strife. That a critical failure would mean whatever skills the players use, um, the bard can't recite the exact poem. The cleric tries to use religion and talks about death and destruction. The barbarian tries to use intimidation to get the rest of the party to cross, and everyone's like, sees the bluff, because the barbarian actually likes everybody and would never smack him in the back of the neck. So that would be a critical failure. On a regular failure, one or more members fail, but if it's a 4-member group, 2 or 3 of them fail. Then they make it across, but their very souls are dampened. Each adventurer suffers a level of strife. And we have success. The adventurers cross the perilous bridge without incident. in a four-person group, three of them would have to make a success. On a critical success, the adventurers crossed the perilous bridge without incident, stronger for having been tested. For the next 11 or 2d6 plus 4 days, they have advantage on saving throws made against mental stress effects. Roll twice on the boons and discovery table. And if you notice, this is a pretty good advantage. I mean, on a critical success, this is pretty good to receive just crossing a bridge of sorrow. But the reason is because uh, explicitly, it's great. You get to roll twice on boons and discoveries, and you have advantage for the next 11 days on saving throws made against mental stress, which is where strife and mental stress come from in A5E. But the reason is because implicitly, it's to condition your players to want to explore your world. And if a bridge of sorrows exists in your world, you don't want the players are always like, we better not cross that, and try to navigate around all of your possibly dangerous and or even lethal exploration challenges, but to engage in them and see what the heck's going on. So, of course, we have pages and pages of things from choking smoke, a corrupted druid's grove, collapsing rooftops. Not all of these are arcane, by the way. Some are just mundane events like counterfeit goods or we have here dark alleys, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go back to a two-pager. Mm, 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 mm. Cursed Waterway, Cursed Temples, Dense Fog, Divine War. I'm so glad that made it in here. That's my biggest contribution into this thing. Under the Divine War, such as uh, how to navigate around it and through it and things like that. Of course, it's a tier 4 exploration challenge, but even with possible possible solutions for under a critical failure, the party gets terribly lost, losing 8 or 2d4 plus 3 hours of travel time, and one adventurer suffers a level of fatigue when they take a hurtful fall in the fog. That's under dense fog. Oops. I hit the wrong one. But yeah, even that, isn't that tier 1? Oh, it's a tier 2 weather effect. Okay. Under critical success in the fog, the adventurers travel unhindered through the area of haze and manage to find a faster route that lets them cover the area in just 1 hour. So there's always some kind of success or failure. Maybe a critical success doesn't give you anything like something magical, like a spell slot or extra hit points. No, maybe it's just, you know what, we thought this was going to take us all day. We might lose 8 hours, but instead it only takes us an hour, and we found a great way through it. Enchanted Windmill, Endless Plummet, End of Hibernation, Fairy Ring, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. So, um, Flimsy Rope Bridge. I love myself some rope bridges. We got some possible solutions, such as under a rope bridge, possible solutions making it across a bridge requires a group check. What's a critical failure on a group check? The bridge suddenly breaks and the party has to scramble or be dropped into the ravine. Each adventurer makes a dexterity saving throw to grab and hold onto the rope as they swing down onto the sides of the ravine, taking 2d6 bludgeoning damage from the impact. Any adventurers ahead of the break fall of the head, excuse me, any adventurers ahead of the break fall towards the far end of the bridge, and those behind the break fall back towards the bridge's start. On a failed save, an adventurer falls 100 feet down into the ravine, taking 35 or 10d6 bludgeoning damage when they land. Climbing back out requires a successful athletics check with advantage if a rope is thrown down. Ooh, pretty horrible in a critical failure. On a regular failure, the bridge breaks as above, but the adventurers have 1 round to react after the process starts, and advantage on their dexterity saving throw to grip the rope. Grabbing both sides and holding the bridge together requires a strength check at the end of each round. So your very strong barbarian might be like, might try to grab both ropes and hold the flimsy rope bridge together. On a success, the adventurers safely make it across the rope bridge. On a critical success, the adventurers safely make it across the bridge and notice something important while doing so. Roll on the boons and discoveries table. Again, explicitly, on a critical success, they might find something. Implicitly, yeah, those flimsy rope bridges, maybe you might want to cross it because you might find something really cool on the other end. And of course, we you got to have one of these flimsy rope bridges maybe before, during, or after some kind of maybe a combat encounter where the players are running from the hobgoblins or the troll or something like that. Maybe there's a sphinx on the other end of the rope bridge, and they not only do they get a critical success and get a boon of discovery, but maybe that sphinx gives them that boon or discovery, and you kind of roll it into the narrative. So again, this is very much about hey Mike, this is very much about shaping critical successes and failures, both with the group and having the group involved in it, and as well as if they fail, they kind of fail together, and um, implying that you might want to roll some dice, even though there's an instinct to hand wave it. You might want to have everybody involved in this thing. Mike says, I can imagine this obstacle also, excuse me, also tying to sanity mechanics or perhaps being used in a Call of Cthulhu temple. Absolutely. Mike's mentioning. Uh, let me let me go back a bit because I know I missed the comment. I apologize for that. But like enchanted windmills and enchanted statues and going back like a uh, well, maybe not a divine war. That might fit. Cursed temples and waterways and places like that that are the Bridge of Sorrows. These, if you want to run more of a horror-based sanity check, which Level Up Advanced Fifth Edition has that in there. You can strife is mental exhaustion with fatigue being physical exhaustion, and going through strife, you can also get mentally debilitating effects. This absolutely fits into something like that. Or maybe you just want to run you you want your game to feel more lived in, meaning like, yeah, maybe your players are all badass warriors, but this eternal war is having a great stress on them. It's taking a toll on their very soul. If you ever uh, see the movie Saving Private Ryan, I mean, sure, those soldiers are great, but by the end of the movie, you can see the psychological toll it's taking on a lot of our main characters, and just proceeding ahead and such. And so, yes, having maybe there's players go into temple, they beat ass on things inside the temple, but maybe the temple has an overlying effect of something, and so you can absolutely use this for this. And making the group responsible collectively is actually a good thing, right? Because if the group is responsible, that means you are sitting on the edge of your seat worrying about what the group does. And so working together collectively, maybe there are hopefully, and this is strange to say, but hopefully you have a weak link in the group, right? So one character isn't physically tough, one character isn't brilliant, one character isn't mentally tough, one character isn't fast or agile or has a lot of balance. And so working together where the other characters lift up take up the slack, right? Hey, I know we got to get across this rickety flimsy rope bridge, and I know you, wizard, and I don't know, a wizard and warlock aren't the most dexterous individuals, so we're going to help you. Mike says, I was specifically talking about the Bridge of Sorrows, but a lot of them apply to a lot of settings and systems. Yes, very much so. Like, what if the temple, the ancient crypt is where the players need to go, but it's surrounded by a Bridge of Sorrows, a densely fog shrouded swamp with ghostly figures in it. Maybe what's a good third one? there are small obelisks out in the wooded area, and if you go past them, you can hear the sounds of the people you let down, the guilt going into your mind or something, and it might be surrounded by that. Yeah, Mike goes on to say, especially in Call of Cthulhu, it's good to have more physical obstacles and hazards rather than clues, clues to research and research to clue. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu can kind of default to that. Research, clue, clue leads to research, research leads to clue, right? And having physical, in other words, you can both challenge your players in their weakest part, like Call of Cthulhu, right? The characters in COC tend to not be physically adept. So challenging them that way is challenging them on their weakest part. And then you got to throw in some goodies, right? Whatever they're great at, throw something in there as well to let them shine a bit. That always helps as well. So let's see if we have anything a little more interesting. Landslides, lethal outgassing, lifeless desolation. Yeah, here in lifeless desolation, there's a lot of like um, more mental effects and strife and that kind of thing. So, for example, here under lifeless desolation, dust lazily drifts across featureless salt flats that extend to the horizon. Food and water are nowhere to be found, and neither is hope. So it's devoid of radiance. Spells that deal radiant damage deal half as much damage, and healing spells restore half as many hit points as normal. It's also lifeless. There are no sources of food or water, and any journey activity checks made in the area to acquire more supply automatically fail. And then natural undead. Any corpse that is not completely destroyed rises as an undead 24 hours later. The type of undead is at the narrator's discretion. A nature check notices that there are no corpses or even skeletons to be found, no matter how small or large, though what that might mean is unclear. And then there's nowhere to hide. Stealth checks made in this area have disadvantage. And lastly, unnatural stress. Boredom and the overwhelming desolation weigh more heavily on the mind with every day that passes. At the end of each short or long rest in this area, each adventurer makes a wisdom saving throw where they suffer a level of strife. And here we go with the implicit and explicit use of something like this. So it says, at the end of each short or long rest in the area, each adventurer makes a wisdom saving throw where they suffer a level of strife. If players keep taking short and long rests, they could double up the fact that they have to keep making wisdom saves to avoid strife, which kind of implies that you might not want to stay around in this lifeless desolation. You might want to get from one end to the other, and hopefully on the horizon, maybe there's mountains or something, and get across the salt flats, not stopping every hour to take a short rest, and then stopping again to take a long rest, and things like that. Yep. And of course, possible solutions include transversing this area, requires spirit and conviction more than physical endurance. The party needs to make a group check to get through the region. Adventurers can choose from the following. And then there's some things like performance check to inspire humor, levity, or vibrancy, maybe a religion check to pray to the gods of light and hope, and then a wisdom saving throw to persevere in the face of despair. And if players are creative, again, the barbarian using intimidation to keep the party moving. It doesn't have to be a barbarian. Maybe they're a marshal or a herald or something. So under a critical failure, that means the whole party fails their check. The fell forces pervading the area prevent recuperation. While in the area, long rests are not possible, and short rests take 8 hours instead of 1 hour. Ooh, brutal. And a regular failure, while in the area, short rests take 2 hours and long rests take 16 hours. On a success, you roll on the boons and discoveries table. And on a critical success, roll 3 times on the boons and discoveries table. So it's kind of cool. Again, no one really wants to go through the lifeless desolation, but if you do, you might come out of it with some pretty cool things on the other end. Here we go. Primordial tornadoes, poorly repaired tunnels, public ceremonies, poison needles. These are all exploration encounters. And if you notice, of course, there are no monsters. This is all stuff traveling. And it's implied. The rules say pick at least one of these when hex crawling, when point doing a point crawl or whatever. When the players are traveling from one place to another, throw one of these in and see what they do. How are they? How do they interact with it or choose not to? And if they do choose to interact with the thing, um, how do they are how do they do so? Are they very creative when it comes to it? What I'm doing is I'm paging down to try to get to the boons and discoveries. See if I can get there. This is how to make your own diseases. Cackle fever, of course. Poisons. Adventuring rewards. Here we go. And here, magic item section. It's the magic item section. Oops. Boons and discoveries. Here we go. Yes. What page is that? 55. So here we go with boons and discoveries. And under boons and discoveries, you roll a d10, and a boon could be an animal, a blessing, a follower, herbs and medicinals, maybe a route, a secret, shelter, additional supply, treasure, and other. And then we have subgroupings of them, such as under animals, boon animals, boon followers, such as and you roll on a table, maybe an apothecary or a bodyguard. Maybe they meet a interpreter or a minstrel, a sage or a squire, maybe a teamster or torchbearer. And then there's other things like the party meets a traveling caravan. Party gains a fan who asks them for a new story or autograph or souvenir. Or the ghost of a fallen traveler finds the party and haunts them, pulling harmless pranks, such as blowing off their hats and scaring their pack animals, scaring their pack animals. And then there's things like herbs and medicinals. Um, there's lists of these things like 1d4 doses of adderwort or 10 doses of spider bulb, which can be made into press silk, maybe 1d4 doses of sycamore or one dose of antitoxin, that kind of thing. There's lists of those medicinals later on in the book. Maybe there's routes or shelter. And so boons and discoveries can be just very general, like, oh, you find shelter. Or you can roll on these other things. Like, for example, maybe they find treasure, like coins lead to a dropped purse or other treasure. Or an adventurer just receives a vision from a pleased god or powerful being who claims to have hidden a surprise along their path. Or an animal leads the adventurers to a hidden cache. Or a wagon stands abandoned with scorch marks and multiple arrows embedded in it. Um, or there's something else, like, for example, a pocket watch that tells perfect time and never needs to be wound. Although maybe in your world, it's like pocket watches don't exist, except maybe they find something. Or trees offer ripened sweet fruits that are desired trade items with local cultures, though they spoil within 1d4 days of being plucked. Things like that. Or the uniform of a local law enforcement or security, or the remnants of a local religious sect, perfect for disguises. You know, so something like that. Maybe the players find. Let's get back to what you guys have to say. So anyway, we've gone to our hour. I just wanted to talk about crits and fumbles. Um, I'm going to say this in the olden days, although I'm pretty sure it exists even now. There were some pretty ridiculous critical hit and critical fumble tables in combat and such, and a lot of them were pretty. When I say ridiculous, like again, the spear or pike holder stabbing themselves in the back. It was, of course, you had like dropping items, breaking items, and things like that. But there were some others that were just like you critically hit your ally or something like that, and you kill your own ally. Some of that, that's not only is that not fun, but when you think about it, the higher level your character is in any D20 game, the more dice you're going to roll, which means that you have a greater chance of rolling a nat one than if you did at lower levels. And usually lower level characters aren't as professional as high level characters, which kind of defeats the purpose, right? So, having ridiculously harmful critical fumble tables or failure tables, and not having interesting critical successes is a problem. And in advanced fifth edition, it really defaults to the narrator to make it um, make sense, right? Like, let's say, for example, you wanted to have the players climb a sheer cliff, and one of the players rolls a critical success on their athletics check. Normally, critical success and failure in other fifth edition clones and D20 games, it doesn't apply to anything. And you wanted to have them make 4 to 5 of these rolls. Well, if they make a critical success, maybe you go, you know what, you don't need to roll anymore. That was your second roll, and you rolled a critical success. You know where all the handholds at. You look up and you're like, yeah, I got a pathway. I can scale this, just using my feet and handholds and stuff. Or maybe your critical success helps other players out. You know, that kind of thing. So it very much implicitly implies for the narrator that if you don't know what to do, give them a benefit, or have them not have to roll further, or when in doubt, go to the boons and discoveries table, give them something from there, give them an expertise dice, hand those out like candy. So again, using crits, fumbles, um, critical successes, critical failures, very much encouraged in Advanced Fifth Edition. So I just wanted to show this to you. Thank you very much, Mike Marin. We're going to go back to, I think tomorrow we're going to do trolls. Um, Basically world building off of some pretty common and pretty traditional fantasy monsters, and we'll take it just a little bit too far. I might do Purple Worms over again because I was thinking of, like, could you imagine like a river or sea full of like purple worms cascading over each other? I don't know if you'd want to sail a ship over a sea full of undulating purple worms, but it would be pretty interesting. Um, Heck, even Mike brought up the idea of, like, spores or pollen or something like that released, and people get taking to the air in flotillas or airships or something to over a devastated landscape that's been destroyed by these purple worms. And heck, maybe there's a push and pull of the purple worms creating very fertile land versus the purple worms consuming the fertility and destroying the life in the land, which is a possibility as well. But all that, of course, you gotta have corpses that people live in and around and things like that, harvesting the materials out of them. Heck, who knows how big a baby purple worm is? Are they small enough to be like maggot sized to humans, and people could get infected by them, or have them, invade their brain or their hearts or something like that? I don't know. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Yes, the show will try to get back to its normal thing, and I will try to get back to, I don't know what is normal in this channel. It's us just talking and having fun, and just going over things. Lastly, before I get out of here, I have been writing a lot. I'm a huge sci-fi head. I'm trying to come up with a good title. I have a working title called Reaching Ort, and OORT. I might just call it Ort, but I'm not exactly certain. But if you guys have a good name for it, it's very post-human transhumanism. Humanity has there's well over 1 trillion souls in this universe. There are people embedded in our solar system from Mercury all the way out to the Oort cloud. And that kind of, yeah, it's very, very, very sci-fi. I'm using the free Cairn RPG system, heavily modified, but I don't know. We'll talk about it. So anyway, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Have a great one. Peace.